I have somewhat fond memories of going through YouTube albums with you over the years, and Zooropa is very interesting because it takes the ideals of a global community, but it also actualizes them.
Hi, I'm Teresa. Welcome to Cocoon Cast, where we deep dive into movies and discuss all things cinema.
Hi, I'm Rebecca. Today we will be discussing the new movie, Kiss the Future.
Rebecca, let's get started.
When the new president of Bosnia and Herzegovina takes aim at the capital of Sarajevo for threatening his ideals, the citizens are thrust in what turns into a siege by their very own military. With the world turning an increasingly cavalier eye to the struggle of Sarajevo's citizens, they adapt to their new way of life. However, not everyone is content with this state of affairs, and soon a small group reaches out to a very visible player on the global stage, U2. Will the people of Sarajevo be heard, or are they destined to land on deaf ears forever?
Rebecca, you were excited to see this movie.
You too.
You too? Yes.
Sorry.
I was very excited to see this movie.
I have somewhat fond memories of going through YouTube albums with you over the years, and Zooropa is very interesting because it takes the ideals of a global community, but it also actualizes them. The people of Sarajevo are a prominent player in this. In fact, several concerts, U2 literally calls them up and goes, "So what's going on in Sarajevo?"
You there, Bill?
Yeah, I hear you, Bono.
I want to say thanks to all you people. We don't feel alone.
Oh, right. They're calling Bill Carter. This whole movie is fascinating. If you did not live through this conflict, I think there's some people that are younger in our cinema community, and maybe some people even my age, that may not have understood this so clearly.
Imagine a president of the United States taking the military. He encircles New York City. He terrorizes the population. That's what Milosevic did to Sarajevo.
To be clear, this is not a YouTube movie or a YouTube concert.
I like that you're bringing this up for our cinema community because a lot of the promotional material I saw really put the emphasis on YouTube and less on the story of the Sarajevo citizens, which this is their story. This is their lives that they're living this conflict through.
You can see on a hill a sniper shooting now.
The Yugoslav army supposed to protect you. All of a sudden, your protector becomes a monster.
This is a documentary, and many players and lots of different people, right? There are some people that are in the underground music.
We had this wonderful scene, having a disco in the middle of the war. It's the only thing that kept us going.
There are people that are journalists.
Journalists were purposefully targeted.
It was ready-made for trouble.
Citizens, Bill Carter. This is based on Bill Carter's book and his story.
I went to Sarajevo, trying to find my way into an aid organization. I thought if I could get Bono, talk to him about these people, maybe we could have a conversation.
And just so many different people. And I know sometimes we talk about, I know sometimes you talk about, they don't build up the story before they go in to help you understand what they did about the conflict. And this, in my mind, did a wonderful job of laying the story for each person that they interviewed, including, right, Bono and The Edge and Adam Clayton and Larry Mullins.
As I say, don't forget Larry.
Yes.
I love that this movie takes the time to get to know each person that it's presenting, because I think that creates a powerfully cohesive story. You really start to see how their lives change. Sure, there's a quick rapid fire introduction, pun intended.
Yes.
But it's mostly to give you a framework of what's changed. Once they start talking about how things that we would take for granted change.
We got here in Sarajevo, we got the rock and roll in their heart.
What would you do if somebody tells you, okay, you got 5 minutes, what would you do? You do what you like the most. And that's what we love the most. And you know what? I would not say that I wasn't ready to die for it.
You really see the impact in people's lives that this isn't just going to be over in 6 months.
One day, my bass player came to me and said, "Oh, our drummer, he lost his hand on the front line."
No, and it wasn't at all. This is there was a small message before. We were so fortunate because the day it released, we were able to see it in Dolby Cinema at our local AMC. Thankfully, they played it. And I appreciated the message before the movie started. Some of the producers, the director, different people were talking in. And Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, actually, their production company had a big part of bringing this to the big screen, if you will.
The message, which I find so beautiful, is what they did in the face of this horrible experience was they used art and music, and it's a celebration of art and the role that it plays in our lives, and as that it's an act of resistance and defiance and community building in the face of this kind of horrific experience that they were having to live through, and it's about the resilience of all of us, and that's a wonderful thing to put out into the world, particularly now, given that it's something that we need to learn and relearn, and we can't quite seem to get right.
And I appreciated them saying this is such a timely message, and it is. It talks about ethnic cleansing. It talks about this civil war of sorts that is happening in their country because their new leader wants their country to be purged of the diversity. It painted the picture of people just cohabitating and people loving one another despite their various, religious differences, cultural differences, ethnicity, everything just taken away from them so quickly.
I think the thing that shocked me with this movie is the timeliness of it that you just brought up a few minutes ago. I think it's so easy to say, oh, that was in the past. We don't need to worry about this. I think this movie gives you a front row seat if you're not living in a country that's dealing with this stuff right now.
Correct.
It gives you a human lens of what does this look like? Well, every day I walk to work, I'm probably going to get shot at.
The audience was literally risking their life, running from the different bridges to the theater. Our sound guy died before one of those performances.
Every day I come home, there might be a shell from a tank that lands in my apartment building. I may be trying to put out a fire, and then they set the lower half of the building on fire just to stop me from putting it out on the top half.
Correct. And those are literal messages and things that the different players actually said. So it's not like, oh, we're hyping this up because we really want you to see this movie. This is actually what was said and what was reported. And this didn't, we reviewed Zone of Interest. We've talked about how important that movie is to see. Before we forget, this is during a portion of your lifetime, right? Before you were born, ending shortly after. This isn't way back in the day, although these are the same stories that need to be told. I think that's important for our cinema community. They interviewed Bill Clinton, and many people remember him as president, right? I remember him as president. There was a young Joe Biden at one point when he was a senator, which I thought was interesting as well. So there are people that I think many in our cinema community will either know or remember having a firsthand experience to this. And then, of course, as we said, right, Bono and U2 come on the scene and they bridge the gap as Bill Carter reaches out to them.
All of us use music to, protect ourselves, as a kind of shield against all the dark forces inside our head. In Sarajevo, there was war. They were in the middle of it, and they were using music as a shield against actual dark forces.
I think that's the takeaway our cinema community should focus on is this movie is all about bridging gaps.
Yes.
Like the citizens of Sarajevo coexisting with their neighbors who may not share their ideals, but share the fact that they live in the same city as each other. I think this brings a real sweetness to it, but it also brings a tragedy of what happens when someone is so dedicated to tearing this apart that they destroy their own country in a way.
One person has such great power. And we always laugh, right? The Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility.
She told me that with great power comes great responsibility.
But what happens when one person's power is irresponsible or hateful or bent on destroying people, a way of life in the name of ethnic cleansing. It's horrific.
It also should remind us as fellow citizens of this planet that we live on,
yes,
that we have a responsibility to others who are suffering to help them in their struggle, to help relieve their struggle, but also bring voice to their struggle for others to say, hey, maybe we can actually do something about this.
That message was communicated, I think, very clearly, because at one point, Bill Carter, who this documentary is based on, his book, Fools Rush In, he's written other books since, but his thought and his statement was, no one is coming to see this. No one is hearing us. Why? And it really, and I don't think it's as easy as, oh, Bono heard him and now. It even then, it took time. But for, like, as you said, how does this happen and we ignore this? And this wasn't overly sensationalized in my mind. This wasn't shock value. This is a documentary and talking about how people are resilient. They talked so much, and I know you love, the indie music and all of that. And they were talking about the art that was happening, the music that was happening, marriages that were happening, relationships. So there was a part of life, even when they were going underground in these basements, there was still life that happened. It didn't freeze it. And it's how do people live in such a horrible environment? And this movie, as you said, it went there. It didn't sugarcoat it, didn't water it down, and it didn't make it look like, oh, it's nothing, but maybe you should see this. It was, please see this. Please hear this.
So I did a little bit of auxiliary research after the movie. One of the things I did love about this movie was the inclusion of firsthand footage, like a boatload of firsthand footage.
Yes, I would agree with that. Very compelling.
According to Kedrick Smale, close to 14,000 people passed away during this conflict.
And that's huge. And we're not talking only military, we're talking civilians, military, and you can see how that happened.
It's laid out very clearly. This is what they did. This is how we responded to it. This is what they did in response to this.
There was one part, and I'm not sure if you remember it, where they were saying how they were blocking with cars and things so they could just go to work. Or you just see the destruction and you see people kind of hustling as they're shooting at these people.
It was interesting. What was
Unbelievable.
What was the Not So Serious Citizens Brigade?
Yes.
I don't remember the exact name right now. I'm kind of focused in my thought right here.
Sure.
They talk about that. They're like, you had to learn how to walk.
Yes.
Because there's a special way to basically get around the city without being shot, to be blunt.
That's unbelievable. And it's not, I don't believe it. It's just so foreign because if we haven't experienced that, and that's the part to say, the people that were there, as you said, there was a lot of footage in this movie. It was done so well and in such a compelling way. The movie should change us. And I don't mean that like, oh, it should. I mean, truly, truly, truly. If you have seen this movie, it should change how you think about other countries, how you think about diversity. At the end, it does culminate in a U2 concert. But again, that ties into the whole story. And it's not just, oh, yeah, they're playing a song. It's Bono's relationship with Bill Carter throughout and other citizens. It's him really understanding the value of his voice, his platform, and U2 as a whole. So it's not like Bono just dragged the rest of them. They all were actively involved in wanting to be part of this. And I was crying at the end. It was so heavy. And then I kind of pulled it together a little bit like, okay, I don't want to miss. I want to listen. And it was just more. And it's just the weight of it.
I think the thing that helps create this weight is this documentary is not exploitative. This documentary is very respectful to the people involved.
And the people that were involved, as you had said earlier, they're the ones doing the talking, which I appreciate. How wonderful in our lifetime they're still here and they want to talk about it. And I didn't hear one of them wanting to, say it for dramatic purposes or shaming purpose, like, oh, your country never did anything. But it is a question to ask is, what do you do as individuals? Because there were a lot of individuals who made sacrifices, sacrificing their life on multiple occasions for multiple years. And then as countries, what do we do? So it didn't feel so overwhelming like, oh, if your country doesn't do anything, what do you do? It's there's a place, there are things that you can do.
One of the other things I love about this film also, it talks about what do people need in this environment?
That's a great question to ask.
Because the question is always, what do we do? But it's rarely, what do we need? How do we survive as people?
That's a great question, because if you hadn't survived it, you may not know what people need. Do we have any questions from the box?
Do you think U2 fans are going to be happy? Do you think they're going to be disappointed? Do you think people that are not U2 fans are going to be happy? Do you think they're going to be disappointed?
Covering all bases, I hear.
Well, our cinema community has a lot of diversity in it.
That's right. That's right.
I think if you're a U2 fan, this is going to feel very on brand for them. If you're not a U2 fan, I think it's going to be interesting to see how music facilitates revolution in a very tangible way.
I appreciated, obviously, I've followed U2 from way back in the day. And Bono and the rest of them were very political back then. And I remember hearing about that and, being part of that understanding. And part of that was informed my reality at the time, for sure. I think there's always the joke, right? Bono is a musician, but he's out there doing this. He's trying to save these people and do this. I think it gives a closer perspective of what exactly does he do? And some people, I think, just want music for music's sake, but they talked about the punk scene and how that factored in. They talked about being in Ireland, how they could really understand. And obviously, as a U2 fan, I could say, I'm biased and things like that. But even if I didn't like their music, I would respect them as people, what they are doing, putting themselves out there.
There's one point where Bono literally offers, hey, let's go to Sarajevo and do a concert. And the rest of the band is like, not yet, buddy, not yet.
That's true. And the part that was funny was once they were able to do that, do you remember they said, we asked everyone who had a part in it, do you want to go? If you don't want to go, we understand it's still risky. And they said not a one person said no. Everyone wanted to go and risk whatever could possibly happen, which they didn't know at the time. All right, Rebecca, it's that time. 1 to 5 moths. What do you think?
4 and a wing.
4 and a wing. Wow. Ooh. Go you. What do you think? Number one reason for 4 and a wing.
Yeah, I can tell you're happy. This covers a lot of the bases I like in documentaries like this. It included a lot of real life footage. The focus was on the people. You really got to get into their mental landscape as things were going on. My only wish is I would have liked to seen some of the lasting legacy and also an epilogue.
Oh, the epilogue. Oh, man. Kiss of death for these movies. Well, I think you already know, but hey, the moths have to come back just for posterity's sake, I'm sure. 1 to 5, it is
5.
5 moth movie.
Oh, I know.
Hands down. I agree. The epilogue would have been nifty. However, this was a fabulous documentary. Every person they talked with, I had a connection with every person. I had no question where they started, and they did. They showed some people now, and so we did get to see it, although they didn't say, and now I'm doing this and this and this. But it was a wonderful documentary, and I'm so thankful for people like Bill Carter who were persistent and honest and make this movie known. And even, I don't necessarily put Ben Affleck and Matt Damon together as bringing this movie here, but I'm so thankful that we were able to see this movie, and I really, really hope our cinema community, if it's anywhere near them, they go see it.
Especially with the current political consciousness, definitely go see this movie.
Correct. It's an important watch. Thanks for joining us. We're always excited to create experiences to bring our cinema community together.
Watch the notifications for a review of the new movie, Dune Part 2. It's almost here! Then come back to the channel this weekend for a weekly show, Movies and More, where we'll have more movie reviews, the latest Hollywood news, and commentary with snark, meant to amuse.
Please remember to like, subscribe, and to share our channel.
If you enjoyed this movie review, you might click the link to check out our review of Bob Marley, One Love, or click the other link to watch last week's show where we reviewed Madam Web.
Remember, cinema community movies are better together. Thanks for watching. See you in the next review.